Hey everyone, how's it going? I hope you're all doing great, as I always say. And in this video, I have a collection of encounters that are pretty wild as usual. There's a couple of them that do have a couple funny moments in them, but they're still pretty crazy. So, if that sounds like something that you would like, definitely pull up a stump with me, and let's jump into it. Thank you for watching. This was a weird experience that I had. I was on the way back from one of my outdoor excursions. I was headed back from the Badlands, if you're wondering, and heading through Wisconsin southeast past Eau Claire. I was driving in the area of Black River State Forest, and I see this figure on the road up ahead. The figure is alerted to my presence, and it perks up. It was roughly 7 to 8 feet tall and slender, and it was a black color. The figure starts walking off of the highway, but the legs are backwards, like a dog's. It has this strange bouncing gait. The thing looks really athletic, like it could run 50 miles per hour or like jump tens of feet in the air. The thing is though, besides walking off the highway, the thing had no discernible interest in me or my car, but it was still one of the creepiest things I've ever seen. There's no chance it was a bear or a deer or anything like that. It just looks so bizarre. When I was younger, I got really sick this one time. I was having a high fever and I had pneumonia-like symptoms, but no one could really figure out just what was going on with me because they kept changing. This one night, I passed out early in the evening. The sun was still up. I was having this dream that I was walking in the forest behind my old school. All of my classmates were just screwing around doing various things around me. My crush at the time was holding my hand as we walked down this path. It's a super innocent and cute dream. My friend Sydney suddenly jumps in front of us into a mud puddle. The second her boots hit the surface of the water, I'm ripped out of the dream by this huge clap of thunder. I'm instantly wide awake. As I'm trying to calm down and adjust to the darkness, I can hear breathing. The lightning flashes, but I can't really see what's going on in my room. I lay back down and begin to calm myself. I can see lightning flashing in the distance. And then something strokes the side of my face, and suddenly I can't scream. It has long sharp nails and clammy skin and has its hand over my mouth. It leans down and whispers into my ear, "Yes, yes." It hisses the words out. It's the old woman from down the street. I manage to pry my mouth open and I scream my lungs out. My mom runs upstairs and helps me get out of bed. By this time, the window is open and there's no one in my room. After she died, we found out that this old woman was indeed a witch. We all thought that it was just a story about her because she was creepy, but the stuff that was found in her house, and other kids got sick like that too, but nobody died. I have to wonder just what the hell she wanted from me. So this isn't exactly a cryptid story, but it still happened. I was 17. I was a senior in high school, a late birthday and stuff. A bunch of us have the great idea to go party out in the boonies. So we drive out there in my friend's piece of crap car on roads that I wouldn't even take a truck on. Now, surprise, surprise, it breaks down. So I get out and I start trying to fix it. And there's this mist that rolls up, creepy even just by itself. I find out the alternator wire shook loose, so I'm under the car trying to hook it back up. My friend starts freaking out, telling me to hurry up. I say, dude, it's going to take a couple minutes. And he says, hurry the F up, in a low, serious tone at this point. I hurry up, and I make record time fixing it. I get up, and I start shaking off the dirt, and through the mist, I can see that we are absolutely surrounded by people. None of them look right. I wish I could say that I stuck around for a second to get a better look at them to see exactly what was wrong, but I got the hell in the car. The engine was already turning over, and they start walking out of the mist toward us. My friend slams on the gas, and we get out of there as quick as I've ever gotten out of anywhere before. I don't even have an analogy for it. And I still can't help but thinking the whole thing was a waste anyway, because the party absolutely sucked. I live deep in the woods in the far north. I see stuff most people would consider crazy every single day. Most recently, I was exploring up on a hill on my ATV when I was suddenly stopped dead in my tracks by a moose femur jammed up through the snow. I couldn't stop in time and it ended up jamming up through my footrest and hit me on the bottom of the foot. After I checked out the bones, I collected a shoulder blade, which was used for calling bull moose while hunting, and the femur. I looked around the area only to notice quite a few black, shadowy entities gathered all around me, staring at me, studying me. I know what they are, so I wasn't afraid, and neither were they. They watched me all the way back to the main road. I was creeped out, but I didn't expect so many of these things up there. I had that feeling, though, for quite some time, that really eerie feeling that you're being followed. Over the hill and off to one side is the only old-growth forest left in my area. I'm sure that they live in those woods. We call them the Cet'aeni, the tailed one. They look kind of like monkeys. They're demonic and hellborn, and they crave blood. Their teeth are all pointed, and their eyes glow a deep demonic blood red. They smell like rotting corpses, rotted cinnamon, sickly sweet. They can imitate the voices of your loved ones, or people you know, and whistle at you in the dark of the woods, trying to lure you into their traps. You can't see them as they truly look if you look at them directly. It's one of the reasons the natives in the north have such a highly developed, evolved peripheral vision. They speak in strange words that resemble my native language, so I can understand them. Sometimes, anyways. But their words are not always spoken out loud. They are not the only things in the woods that can make someone seemingly disappear without a trace, but they are the only species that can do so without leaving a scent trail. I am reasonably certain that they are the ones who are responsible for a lot of those missing 411 cases and other cases of people going missing in the forests. The creepiest stuff ever is walking home through the snow and -30 in the cold woods while a little tipsy, and you hear your little sisters cry out for help from farther in the woods. Twice. Then, the voice of your cousin, who you haven't seen for months, laughing in her voice. When that happened, I almost lost it, but I immediately knew what they were trying to do, and I just yelled back, "Nice try," followed by some profanities. I laughed until I got to my property, where that feeling of being hunted subsided finally. These things are real, and they are everywhere. Anyone who denies the paranormal has never ventured into the darkness of the forest in a place where they ought not to be. Another time, I was chasing a young bull moose into the woods in a place that I have never explored. because of the presence of a former burial ground of my people while wandering in the woods. So I'm looking for the moose, and I've got lost, and I've never ever been lost in these woods. I got that feeling of being hunted again, just before an owl dove out of a tall tree and swooped over my head from behind. It was so close that the tail feathers touched my head, and the flap of its wings knocked the air out of me. I knew I wasn't supposed to be there, and that I was being blessed by some old Indian god of the forest, so I left promptly and took the warning. I have lots of stories like this, but too many to recall in the moment. When I was 19, I was driving home from a friend's house one night. It was about 2 a.m., and I'm driving somewhat fast to try and get home for work the next day. I was driving 70 in a 55. The road I take doesn't have any lights on it, and it's pretty offbeat, so it doesn't get that much traffic, or cops for that matter. I turn around a bend and see lights approaching. At first I thought they were coming from the other lane, which is no big deal. Still, at about 70 miles per hour, but within seconds, I notice the lights swerve into my lane, and I think, oh crap. I break down to 55 and then 50 and slower. As I get closer, I notice that the lights are not heading toward me, but are actually slowly moving in front of me. I am immediately thinking, this is weird. I continue to slow down to about 35 as I'm getting closer to these lights. It's then that I notice that the dual back or headlights that I thought that I was seeing were actually coming from one source. I continue to creep to 25. Somehow, I still feel like I'm traveling faster than this vehicle in front of me. This whole time, I feel incredibly anxious, like I'm about to get into an unavoidable crash. It's dark out, but I finally get close enough to make out the shape of a lantern swaying. Again, I'm like, what am I seeing? What is this? And I swear, it was a faint, silhouetted carriage. I drove right through it. I look in my rearview mirror, and I see the shape of the carriage and the light from the lantern for about 15 seconds before it seemed to fade out. I pulled to the side of the road and got out to inspect. There's nothing around. There's no cars. There's no carriage in sight. I just get back in the car and I speed home. This happened about a year and 6 months ago. I have a regular side job of feeding cows for my grandfather on his 3 properties, with all 3 being lumped together, adding up to maybe 300 acres. The service truck that I drive is a diesel and doesn't drive very fast. I start work at 5 in the winter, so this is nighttime work, which, by the way, sucks balls. I filled up the 6 buckets that I needed for the 2 farms after I feed the first. The second farm is only accessible from a very small rural back road. I pull up to the gate that goes inwards toward the forest. It opens into a field with trees on the left and right, and the center opens into a large field. I put my hand down looking for my keys. I can't find them. I'm frustrated and tired. I get out and I go back around the truck to open the tailgate. I grab 2 buckets and I grunt and swear to myself while putting them on the ground. And I walk to the gate and I start lifting the buckets over the gate. And then there's a grunt that comes from the woods, and it repeats back to me the same swear word that I just said. It came from the woods behind me on the next property over. Also my property, but it's not really used. This property is nothing but dense forest that moves uphill, and then that hill goes into an even larger hill. I'm kind of worried. I listen closer. It repeats the grunt and the swear word, this time sounding more like me. I'm very confused at this point. I'm wondering what the hell is making that noise and why it sounds like me. It's not loud enough to be heard over footsteps, so I ignore it. Over the next 4 weeks, though, I keep hearing similar sounds and phrases coming from that area. I always carry a 45 and a 30-08 in my back seat with a full magazine, so I feel pretty safe, but I'm still very cautious. The sound keeps getting closer and closer every day of the week, but not fast enough that it's super noticeable. One night, I pull up to the gate this time with my keys, and the cows who are used to my sounds and presence start to flood through the trees in a line. I step out of the truck and start pouring the feed into the concrete feeding troughs. I look up, and the cows are staring at something. One bellows near where they are looking. After maybe a minute, all of them are staring at whatever is beyond the tree line, a sound that sounds exactly like the bellow the cow made, comes from the tree line, the same tone, inflection, everything. There's a big difference though. It's much louder than the cows, and much deeper. The cows turn and bolt away from the sound, and I'm sitting there, confused. At this point, I have my hand on my 45, and I'm kind of scared. Whatever this was, it was nothing like I have ever heard or experienced, and I can't imagine any animal that can do that. I slowly make my way around the back of the truck and onto the other side, away from where the sound came from, all the while with my eyes still on the tree line. Slowly, something comes into the light of the headlights, and I'm honestly shaking now at just thinking about it. Whatever this thing is, wasn't human. It looked human, but wrong. Its legs were about the same length as its arms, and it walked on all fours. On all fours it stood maybe 5 feet tall. It didn't notice me standing there, watching it. It started to sniff the ground like a dog. It moved about, sniffing the ground, and it raised its head in the air and looked over toward the truck, and my God, its eyes. They were bright, yellow, and very sunken into its head. Its mouth protruded inwards like a hole with skin wrapped around the inside. It flared out its jaws like when you move your jaw or have an underbite. It did this while sniffing the air. That's the best way I can describe it. The ground was really slippery at the time from a week of rain, and I tried to back up and grab my FAL and slipped. The sound of me falling made the thing turn toward me. It couldn't see me, but it was trying, straining its veiny and long neck toward me. And then it stood up. This thing stood. It got up on its hind legs, and it was 5 feet on all four, so it had to be standing like 9 feet tall. I'm 6'1", and it dwarfed me, and I can't stress that enough how it towered over me. Me and my athletic 230-pound build, set in the mud, petrified by this creature standing maybe 30 yards at 9 feet tall, was definitely a situation that I've never imagined myself being in my entire life. I vault upwards with my legs and swing the door open and grab my 30-08 and turn toward the thing. As I'm turning my sights to lay on it, I get a sight picture, and this thing is galloping toward me. I popped 5 shots off at the creature, and hunters know that sound that's made when you land on a target, the thump of the round penetrating the target. I landed 3 shots, 2 in the chest and 1 in the neck. This creature made a gurgling sound similar to the cow bellow that it made a few minutes earlier. It slid and fell on its side and writhed around on the ground in a circle. It got back up and stared at me. Those eyes were penetrating, and I laid 2 more rounds near its chest and head. That scared it enough to turn and run back into the woods and to the field. I don't know why, but I had the strong urge to pursue it, and I jumped in the truck and followed it. I went down through the creek bed to go to the field when I broke through and beamed my light to where the creature ran. I could see its trail leading away from the field. It took maybe a minute or maybe 2 minutes to get through the creek bed, and by that time the creature had made it halfway across a 2.5 football field size field. I'm still shaken by this. The next day I came out early in search of blood, and the blood was black. I wish I had pictures to show you, but if I'm honest, I never really carry a cell phone or a camera on me, and I originally wasn't planning on sharing this at all. But yeah, that's what happened. This happened a few years ago. I was at my family cabin in northern Wisconsin. I was hunting, fishing, and shooting with my uncle. We have this tradition whenever we're out in the country like this, where we like to take a midnight stroll to the end of the long driveway and just look at the moon and stars. My uncle brought along his Mossberg because there are a lot of bears in this area. I'm carrying a 9mm because I'm 16 and I think that I'm some kind of hardcore badass. You probably know the feeling. I also wear glasses and I have very terrible night vision. Basically, it was pitch black for me, but my uncle could see fine. We get pretty much to the end of the driveway. There's a beer in one hand and a gun in the other, and it feels really good to be spending time with my uncle like this. And we're just enjoying the night, but then there's a rustling in the woods on the other side of the dirt road. My feelings of being a badass immediately leave me, and I think, oh crap. I raise my pistol and aim from where the rustling is. My uncle says, "That's a guy. Put your gun down." He yells out, "Howdy, stranger." The rustling stops. It vaguely looks like somebody is standing in the middle of the dirt road, and I just feel scared. And then it kind of slinks back into the darkness. A few minutes later, there's rustling from behind us now, but we didn't see anything cross the road. My uncle says that we should just head back. He seems a little off-put by the whole thing. We hear a loud bang from the direction of the cabin. Not a gunshot, though. Once we get there, the cabin door is wide open. My uncle says, "Damn it, boy, we're going to get eaten alive by mosquitoes all night. Why'd you leave the door open?" And I remind my uncle that I was outside before he was. And he says he's 100% sure that he closed it and locked it. Upon closer inspection, the frame is broken and the door has been kicked in. My uncle clears the place while I stay outside with my gun on the ready. There's nobody inside and nothing missing. My uncle says it must have been just some weird kids looking for drugs or guns. I suppose we shouldn't worry about it tonight. Obviously, I can't sleep. The door is rigged to partially shut with some wire, but the mosquitoes still get in and they're all over me, and I'm still scared as hell. I really need to go to the bathroom at some point in the night too. I'm desperate, so I decide to crack open a window and pee out of it that way instead of going outside. I look out at the forest as I'm peeing. I see the same figure as before, standing at the tree line, staring straight at me. I just kind of finish what I'm doing because I can't exactly stop, and then I just lock the window as best I can and lay back in bed. I stare out the window the entire night. I don't sleep. In the morning, we find a dead raccoon on the picnic table. The guts are hanging out of it and heavily chewed on. The bite marks look almost human. My uncle heaves it into the woods and decides that we should just head home. My uncle and dad sell the cabin a week later, and we never go up again. 2 years later, we're having Thanksgiving dinner at my grandparents'. My uncle and I are having a beer. He asks me if I remember the night when the door got kicked in at the cabin. I say, yeah, I think about it a lot actually. He tells me that the guy that he saw across the road wasn't just some kid. He said the guy wasn't wearing any clothes. He was covered in leaves, and he had no pupils, just strange white eyes and a heavily deformed face. His arms were longer than a normal human, just really emaciated looking. He told my dad, and my dad says that he saw the same thing when he was a teenager and used to go there himself. Just after that, they both decided to sell the cabin. I found out years later that the people that we sold the cabin to may have sold it to another couple, and then one of their daughters went missing near the cabin. The disappearance remains unsolved. So, what'd you think of those encounters? Let me know which one was your favorite one down in the comments. Do you have one of your own? I have an email in the description that you can send them to if you want to. And also in the description, I have a PayPal and a Patreon if you want to donate to the channel that way. And I hope you all like and subscribe and stuff, but no pressure. Just watching the video is good too. And with that, I think that I will see you in the next one. Thank you for pulling up a stump. Thank you for watching. And I hope you have a good night, a good evening, or a good morning whenever you're watching this.